The air screamed. It was the specific, high-pitched shriek of orbital plasma turning stone into molten glass. Sergeant Kaelen Thorne did not run. Instead, he dove into the kill box, his combat armor locking rigid as he curled his body around the small, trembling figure of the Xylorian child. A shield of flesh against the fire. The impact slammed into his backplate, a concussive hammer blow that cracked his ribs and flooded his HUD with critical warnings. He wasn't fighting an enemy anymore, he was defying physics, a stubborn death welder refusing to let an innocent burn. Through the haze of heat and ozone, he looked up, his visor shattered, staring directly into the barrel of the enemy commander's rifle. The galaxy had been a very different place. Outpost Kaelus was crumbling. The structure, once a gleaming jewel of the Galactic Council, was now a corridor of jagged metal and sparking conduits. The Xylorian rescue squads were breaching the perimeter with terrifying efficiency. To the uninitiated, the Xylorians were monsters hulking, reptilian shock troopers often dismissed by lighter species as Space Orcs. They were the apex predator of this sector, bred for dominance and driven by a code of honor that viewed retreat as a sin. But they had never fought the United Terran Coalition on the ground before. Kaelen moved through the burning atrium with practiced fluidity, the vibration of heavy footsteps thrumming through the floorboards. His rifle was an extension of his will, snapping up to cover angles, suppressing the corridor with controlled bursts. This wasn't the clean, sterile combat of a theoretical science fiction story. This was the brutal, sweaty reality of close-quarters engagement. Sector 4 is compromised. Kaelen's comms crackled, the voice of his lieutenant barely audible over the roar of collapsing masonry. They're bringing down the ceiling. Fall back to the extraction point. Negative, Kaelen gritted out, seeing the thermal signatures spiking ahead. Civilian presence detected in the crossfire. I can't leave them. This was the Terran spirit the galaxy found so confusing. Humans were soft, squishy biology wrapped in hardened alloys, yet they possessed a stubborn refusal to accept the inevitable. It was the essence of HFY, that chaotic mix of bravery and madness. Kaelen vaulted over a pile of debris, sliding into cover as a plasma bolt scorched the air where his head had been milliseconds prior. Alara, though he didn't know her name then, was frozen in the center of the walkway. She was small for a Xylorian, her iridescent scales dull with dust, clutching a toy made of woven distinct alloys. The Xylorian breach team, focused entirely on the human defenders, hadn't spotted her. They were laying down heavy suppression fire right where she stood, their targeting algorithms focused on the enemy, blind to their own kin in the smoke. Standard protocol dictated retreat, survival instinct screamed to pull back. But Kaelen possessed that volatile variable, human ingenuity coupled with reckless empathy. He didn't calculate the odds. He dropped his weapon. The Xylorian squad leader, High Commander Vreya, watched in stunned disbelief. In all her cycles of war, she had never seen a combatant disarm himself in the middle of a firefight. The human broke cover, sprinting not away from the danger, but directly into the heart of it. He was a blur of motion, driven by a singular purpose that transcended the uniform he wore. The world dissolved into white fire. Kaelen didn't feel the floor impact, he only felt the crushing weight of the shockwave. His armor, designed to deflect kinetic rounds, buckled under the thermal intensity of the plasma volley. Alarms shrieked in his helmet, a chaotic symphony of failure warnings, but his arms remained locked like iron bands around the small Xylorian girl. He was a cage of ceramite and stubborn bone, absorbing the fury meant for her. The firing stopped. It wasn't a gradual tapering, but an instant, terrified halt. Smoke spiraled from Kaelen's scorched backplate. He gasped, the sound ragged and wet, sensing the internal damage before his suit could diagnose it. He rolled onto his side, agony flaring white-hot. But his first movement was to check the child. Alara was unharmed, her wide reptilian eyes staring at him, not with fear but with a profound alien confusion. A shadow fell over them. High Commander Vreya stood there, her weapon lowered. The air around her shimmered with residual heat. To the Xylorian rescue team, this was an impossibility. A Terran, a fragile death welder, had thrown himself into the incinerator to save the offspring of his enemy. Why? Vreya's voice was a low growl, translated by his failing audio sensors. Kaelen coughed, tasting copper. She wasn't a combatant, it was the ultimate expression of humanity. In a galaxy ruled by survival of the fittest, this soldier chose compassion over self-preservation. He had proven that the terrifying reputation of the Terran spirit wasn't just about endurance, it was about the ferocious capacity to care. Freya dropped to one knee. The surrounding Xylorian troopers watched, their weapons pointing at the ground. By their code, a life saved by blood demanded a life given in return. But Kaelen was fading. His biomonitors were flatlining. "You acted with the heart of a brood protector," Freya stated, her voice trembling with a strange intensity. She engaged a device on her gauntlet, a jagged, crystalline needle extending from the wrist. "Do not die, Terran. You have earned a name." She drove the needle into her own palm, drawing thick, violet blood, then pressed her hand against the exposed ruin of Kaelen's chestplate. "I invoke the blood bond of Kith. His flesh is my flesh. His fight is my fight." Nanoconveyors surged from her suit to his, carrying genetic stabilizers and rapid clotting agents unique to her species. It was a forbidden merging of biology, a desperate act that rewrote the rules of engagement. The enemy who became a son. 6 months later, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council hummed with polite conversation, a stark contrast to the roar of battle. Kaelen stood at the podium. He looked different now. The scar tissue along his jaw shimmered with a faint violet hue, a permanent mark of the genetic adoption that had saved his life. He wasn't just a sergeant of the United Terran Coalition anymore. He was kith-kin to High Commander Freya, a living bridge between two warring stars. Beside him, Freya stood tall, her hand resting protectively on his shoulder, a gesture that sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. Peace was not bought with a treaty. Kaelen addressed the council, his voice steady and amplified across the chamber. It was bought with a soldier's mercy. We assumed the Xylorians were monsters. They assumed we were pests. We were both wrong. In the gallery, a small Xylorian child waved a toy made of woven alloys. The war had ended not because one side ran out of ammunition, but because one man decided that saving a life was more important than taking one. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget. 2 species, 1 family.